Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Reinke and Ben Munson. We've been covering the manufacturing and design engineering industries for more than 15 years. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Ben at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us every Thursday when we go live, making sure that we have a quality internet connection to actually make it happen. Otherwise, thanks for trying. Every week we take the 5 biggest stories on our websites like manufacturing.net, IEN.com, and Design and Development Today and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Jeff, how are you doing this week?
I'm good, David. Is it a little bit brighter in here?
It is brighter in here. I think we got the house lights up. Do we normally have those down? It's fine either way.
All right. I just noticed. I wasn't sure if I was just more awake and alert.
No.
Or if it was for real.
Yeah, no, it is. But it's like one of those things where, you're in it and all of a sudden you're just like, is that, we always do this?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's just,
okay.
Yeah, we're just seeing, oh man, there they go.
Okay,
there
now this feels normal.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not saying better.
Just
sleepy. Normal.
Yeah.
So,
Ben, thank you for joining us this week. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Yeah, and I love the lights thing. That's great. Having lights, using them. I don't know.
Ben is grateful for all the little things that we have
it's
going
a gift.
for us.
Yeah, it's a gift, and you should be grateful every day.
Yeah,
for light.
Do you prefer
one to grow on with Ben Munson?
Do you prefer the light with full or the world with full light or dimly lit?
No, yeah, very dimly lit. Like the overhead. I hate these things.
Yeah.
I went from being grateful to hate. Like I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
kind of a diva moment there.
3 sentences from nothing but love.
Yeah. It's like, man, I'm just so grateful. I hate everything.
Well, all right. While we're all rays of sunshine, let's jump into a word from our new sponsor, Clio Communications. This episode is brought to you by Clio Communications. Increasing efforts in digitalization, automation, and analytics is a priority for 30% of operation and supply chain officers heading into 2025. However, the majority of the supply chain workforce still lacks the digital expertise needed to operate promising tools such as generative artificial intelligence or generative AI or Gen AI and automation tools. The 2024 Supply Chain Jobs Report from Clio Communications gives you a detailed look into what supply chain organizations are doing or not doing to prepare their workforce for emerging tech, along with the digital skills you need to embed it into your hiring criteria. Download the 2024 Supply Chain Jobs Report right now. All right, our first story this week. Space tourism company furloughs most workers after eviction notice. Founded in 2018, Space Perspective wanted to sell you trips to the stratosphere on a giant balloon. Spaceship Neptune is actually described as a crude, pressurized gondola propelled by hydrogen. It's because of Brockmeyer. I just want a gondola. It's in there. Just like Space Neptune is described as a crude, pressurized gondola propelled by hydrogen. It's just always in there. Late last year, it looked like the Florida company was headed in the right direction, and in September, the company completed its first uncrewed test. Space Perspective even added a little star power when it was revealed that Richard Branson was not only helping fund the project, but he planned to co-pilot the first crewed mission this year. Things aren't looking so good in 2025, as recent reports revealed the company was about $90,000 behind on its rent payments to the Space Coast Regional Airport in Florida. Finally, on January 17th, the company received an eviction notice. Delays have tapped capital, and it's costing more than expected to buy and retrofit the MS Voyager. That's the ship developed for the launch and recovery of the balloon. CEO Michael Savage says Space Perspective has furloughed most of its 140 workers and is looking for a lift from outside investors. But it's not over yet. A skeleton team is keeping the company aloft while the company looks for a lifeline. Still, the company says it plans to begin offering 6-hour balloon rides next year, and for a low price of $125,000 per ticket. Jeff, would you buy a ticket now if you also got equity? That could be the next fundraising.
I'm going to pass on this one.
Okay.
I've got this fear of heights, and with it being like a slow rising balloon, the view when you got there would be amazing, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could handle the journey.
No, okay. Just like an escalator to nowhere.
Yeah, even though it's fully enclosed, and I get all that. I don't know if I could handle it or not.
I mean, I understand heights. This is not, that should be the first thing on the brochure. How are you with heights?
Yeah.
If so, skip to page 9.
I can't even handle those videos where they're showing the guy like on the cell phone tower.
Oh, I love those.
Anyway, a lot of interesting things here as far as why this isn't coming to work out. It's interesting that Branson got involved, but there's already so much competition here, and you have a very limited customer base in terms of those that can just fork out $125,000 to go on a 6 hour.
6 hours, yeah.
You got all the cool stuff going on there in terms of food and beverage and all that, but it's still $125,000. So,
but they have Wi-Fi.
And you're not going to go by yourself, I don't think. So, a lot of different things here. And plus, there is so much more competition when it comes to the space tourism right now. Mm-hmm. So, how many people can afford it? There's just a limited scope of individuals that you can really target with this. And it seems like everybody's already got a vested interest in one of them, whether it's Virgin, whether it's a handful of the others that are trying some of these similar approaches. I think what's also interesting here is this is a company that did raise in the neighborhood of $100 million in funding. And you can appreciate the technology and the safety elements, everything will be involved, and how you could blow through $100 million pretty quick.
Yeah.
But they even sold like $200 million in tickets.
Yeah.
And this isn't stuff like, they'll refund the ticket, but people paid for those tickets. They had cash in hand. So they've gone through over $250 million in trying to get this off the ground.
Yeah.
And it just isn't working out. So I think it again brings into scope, this is not easy to do. It's extremely expensive, and you're just limited in so many ways in terms of who can participate and who can afford it.
Yeah. So. It's I like when you see competitive ventures like this, because you hope that it would somehow bring the cost down. Yeah. But it sounds like such a unique trip, but man, $125,000. I guess if you have like some sort of spiritual awakening like Shatner had on his trip or whatever, that is like seemed to have shaken him to his core ever since he took it. Maybe then I could, not be talked into it, but at least entertain a conversation.
This is not for us.
No. But that's what I'm saying. Hey, now that they're cash strapped, all right.
Do you really want the discount version of this?
It is. I don't want the discount version, but all right, I'll buy a ticket and I want a piece of that.
I don't want there to be like a first, second, third class seat for something like this. That would be kind of terrifying.
I think the ticket I want to buy is just like you actually just dangle from the balloon in like a child's swing.
You just grab onto like a handle with a string on the outside and just hold on to that as you go up. That's like the $10,000 ticket.
Well, and I understand that I don't get all the ins and outs of the engineering behind this, but doesn't $300 million seem like, Ben, doesn't $300 million seem like enough money to make a space balloon happen?
Yeah, I don't know where
Come
a lot
on,
of this
God.
development
Ben, this is why we had
at.
you on the show. You should be able to dissect and break down all these really complex, aerospace.
$150 million too much, I say.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't. So I'm gonna set this one out. No, I'm just kidding. I still hope it happens, because I think it has the kind of the ability to maybe like democratize space travel. Mm-hmm. Obviously not from the cost standpoint, because that's crazy.
Yeah.
But astronauts, they train to handle like an enormous amount of gravity force, and a regular person can't do that.
Yeah.
At very best, you'll black out, probably poop your pants, but this is a 12 mile per hour, that's like slower than I ride my bike.
Yeah.
And you just go up and then you come down. Does it seem like kind of a hassle, because you have to launch from a seafaring vessel and then it picks you up.
Yeah.
Yeah. 6 hours from wherever you were. I don't know where you come back down, probably back in the water.
Yeah, it's like you get space tourism and a brief cruise.
Yeah. And the amenities, I think, are kind of funny too, like Wi-Fi and a meal. I'm like, like what?
Food and drinks. I also like how they go out of their way to say it also offers a restroom.
Yeah.
Just like, good? Was there a question about that?
There's going to be kids like on their phone the whole time. Yeah. It's like kids that like using their phone like courtside in an NBA game. That's going to be the next thing.
Hey,
like,
we saw what happened to that.
Like, hey, we're in space. You want to like look out the window? Be like, no, I'm fine.
Yeah. I got to finish
this game. You're going to eat a meal while you're up there? Like, this is really good. I'm like, no, I think I would like focus on what's happening.
Yeah.
But like we've already covered, it's very expensive. And it's crazy that, it costs more for one seat than they owe in back rent.
Yeah. Well, that was one thing. It didn't specify how much rent that was. Like, are they late a month? But I mean, I get it. It's an eviction notice. So it's probably been some time. Mm-hmm. Right. Sell one more ticket, pay your rent.
Yeah. So it seems like a relatively small cost, especially to an investor like Richard Branson, right? So does that suggest like maybe they're losing a little bit of confidence in the concept?
Yeah. I mean, maybe. And especially, there are better ways to make money with this, using balloons to deploy assets. And we've seen other competitors in the space do that. There was just a few months ago, there was a Chinese outfit that deployed assets for the Chinese military from a balloon like this. And we've talked about how some of these other commercial space operations are launching a plane to then launch another rocket, up into the stratosphere. And this is a much more reasonable way to do that. Hey, if you could bring 8 people into space and like drop a couple of satellites or maybe some sort of supersonic missile with it, you're getting paid from both ends. I think that there are definitely better and safer ways to invest. I mean, when you hear a name like Richard Branson, it just makes sense that he is attached to this type of project because it seems like it checks a lot of the Richard Branson boxes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Savage, the CEO, he said the cuts are part of the space travel industry's high risk, high reward model. And it's just, I mean, if you are able to raise $100 million plus another $200 million or whatever in tickets, you are quite the salesman. Just like, well, you know what? We're going to need another $100 million, and you never know because space travel, risky venture, but it's going to be cool. And we got Richard Branson, so you're not going to lose. I don't know. I hope for the best for space perspective, but it doesn't sound good. Just a skeleton crew kind of keeping the lights on. I got a feeling like we might have a follow-up to the story sooner than later. All right, our next most popular story this week, Steelmaker's skeleton to save historic ship from crumbling. Alema is a Swedish steelmaker that makes products out of advanced stainless steel and special alloys. The company is facing a unique challenge, the crumbling remains of a nearly 400-year-old ship. On August 10th, 1628, the Vasa cast off from Stockholm, left the harbor. The Vasa was 52 meters from tip to keel, 69 meters long, and weighed 1,200 tons. Now, you would think that something like a mighty gust from the gods caused the ship to capsize, but it was dangerously unstable due to a design flaw that made it top-heavy. Now, quote, really tippy isn't good for a vessel that can be taken down by a light breeze. About 1,300 meters into its maiden voyage, a gentle gust from the gods brought her down. Water poured in through the open gun ports, which were too high, and the Vasa sank to the floor of the sea. At least 30 of the 150 people on board perished. About 333 years later, divers found the Vasa. More than 14,000 loose pieces of wood were pulled from the sea and the ship was salvaged. But it's taken considerable effort to make it happen and preserve it. Now on display at the Vasa Museum in Stockholm, the ship remains incredibly fragile. The museum reached out to Alema to make an inner steel skeleton, a truss built out of tubes to stabilize the hull. The skeleton will be made out of a high-alloyed SAF 2507 stainless steel material. The inner steel skeleton will reach from the keel to the upper deck and support the loads from the deck and deck beams. However, the inner steel support must be strong and light. The Alema will use a design that prevents the project from drilling too many holes in the hull. Because this material is so strong, actually, the skeleton is going to take a lot less holes. And the steel's high corrosion resistance allows it to come in direct contact with the ship without being affected by the acid that's given off by the wood. The entire project should be completed by 2028, which actually lines up really nicely with the ship's 400th anniversary. Now, Jeff, I know that it's rare that we see such a feat of engineering going in to preserve such a historically, tragically flawed design engineering project.
The Vasa definitely has to be one of those just engineering disasters that is historically. The reason why that this thing was able to be restored in the first place is because it went down so fast. It was not part of any battle or crazy like storm.
Yeah.
It literally was like the cartoon where you see it going out and it just kind of goes down.
It's like
sinks.
Like new condition just at the bottom of the sea.
It's like if I forgot to put the plug in the boat as I was going out fishing.
Yeah.
That's basically what happened here.
Yeah.
It's really crazy. Our fascination with these ships from this era, and I can appreciate from an aesthetics, like, wow, this is incredible. And some of the engineering. But what's also amazing is how we try to romanticize a period that if you read about it at all, being on these boats was horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read a couple of different books, and just between the scurvy and the living conditions and everything else, man, no thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, this is interesting from a perspective of what they've been able to do. Obviously, it is incredible sort of mixing the old with the new. And what it got me thinking about, again, borrowing one of my favorite catchphrases and the thing that could lead to the thing.
Oh, yeah.
When we look at what we're doing here with this, this ancient wooden product, what other applications are there than for this type of process? We have a lot of things, from whether it be old barns, old houses, even furniture, that we like to preserve because it's cool. It's wood and it's got a feel and a look to it that we really cherish. Maybe this is a type of approach we can take to preserving a lot of other things instead of just throwing it away, which is a definite issue right now. So I think it's interesting from both perspectives in terms of how we try to romanticize this element of this lackluster engineering.
Would have been like to be on the sea back in the day.
Oh man, horrible. $2 if you want to really appreciate how bad it was. Hampton Sides wrote a book called The Kingdom of Ice, and this was like 200 years after this.
Yeah,
and it was still bad. Yeah. And then another one, The Wager by David Gran. And that was about a shipwreck and everything else, but still scurvy. I mean, that's some nasty, nasty stuff. Anyway, I'm getting off topic, but. Again, it's interesting how we can take with this horrible engineering disaster and learn something from it and put it to use here in modern day and maybe lead to other stuff.
So
I think a good way to prevent scurvy, though, is to only make it maybe a couple hundred meters from shore.
You are not going to get scurvy.
No.
1,300 meters from shore.
It's not enough time for it to develop. Yeah. No. It's not going to kick in.
Yeah. I guess you could check the food supplies. And if there wasn't that much on there, like they didn't have any rations, it's just, they knew. They knew we didn't stand a chance. It's like, anyone notice there is no food on board?
No citrus was found in the wreckage.
Yes. Producer Alex says, tip to keel, killer band name. So I agree. Ben, one of the things with this is, this person still spent more than 2 years building this ship. This was like a person's, I think it was an architect's, like magnus opus, the greatest, the crowning achievement of their life's work. And just to still be within like eye shot and just watch her, like not even go like, you probably, if you were watching from afar, have no idea why it even went over, because they said it was like, quote, a gentle breeze kind of hit the sail and just knocked her over. And then it was all done for. I mean, that is just got to be incredibly deflating.
Yeah, I think the story makes the ship even more worth saving.
Yeah.
The fact that it was so bad.
Yeah.
And that somebody spent so much time and they were really proud and then it just sunk. Like maiden voyage, they could still see it like,
but think about how much work has gone in, like how much ancillary business has been developed because of how terrible it was. I mean, so the museum it's in was even specially built for the ship. Like they're just like, all right, well, we got all this out of the water. What do we do now?
Yeah, I've been in a museum kind of similar to that,
okay.
in Oslo for a ship called the Fram,
Okay.
which is like I think an Arctic exploration ship, maybe a little over 100 years old, so not nearly as old, but still they built, they parked the ship and then they built the museum around it, and
That's cool.
it's got like 3 levels. It's kind of an open thing though, so the ship is in the center, 3 levels of railings, and you can enter and view it from different angles, and it's amazing. And I think with this application, with them, with this Steelmaker helping to kind of reinforce the ship, it's preserving that for other people that want to go see this, because I would imagine you couldn't get really close to it, or even potentially board the ship if it's completely rotten like this. So
could you go on that ship in Oslo?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what was that like?
It was really cool.
Yeah.
But like super low, like entryways and stuff like that. And
Okay.
Yeah, just really old wood, just soaked with like fish oil.
Right.
Yeah. It was really neat though. Yeah, it's a great museum. And anytime I love the way that they just kind of build around it,
Yeah.
It's like, it's here now, so let's build a house around it.
Yeah, it's a wild concept. Like, just another part of this story that really struck me too was how Alema, which used to be Sandvik Materials, they've actually worked on the Vasa before. As part of the story, I found out that in 2011, when it was still Sandvik, the company replaced more than 5,000 rusty bolts with these specially developed high alloy parts. And, I get it. 5,000 rusty bolts. That is a lot of weight. But I mean, they wound up making it more stable and shedding 8 tons from the ship's overall weight. Like, that is incredible to think about. The press release said an elephant, a school bus. Either way, when you think about like just removing that much weight from it, I don't know. It's, I don't know. I guess I don't know how deep they were into, ship making technology back then. Maybe they were still working some kinks out.
Apparently.
Was that another like design flaw with the ship originally, that it had like 8 tons of bolts on it?
Well, and it was and the gun decks too. The gun decks were too high and too heavy, and I think it had multiple levels of gun decks. I might be remembering it incorrectly, but like, which made it so much more top heavy, is they had all this artillery up there. And well, that's another thing. Imagine how much they had invested in that, in like resources.
But that wasn't the issue. The issue is that they didn't have a ballast that was able to bring in enough water to sort of counterweight everything.
Yeah.
But
it was that it was too high, too heavy. And I mean, but so you're like the government official hanging out and just like, man, we have millions of our like biggest, brightest new cannons in there. And now they're gone.
It's funny that it took them 300 some years to find it.
Yeah.
It was like,
right
can't
there.
you see it from the shore?
Yeah.
Like, it's right out there. That's where it sunk.
You guys have been looking for it? It's like a part of it's still sticking out.
Yeah. I'm like, we can swim out there right now if you want.
Yes. Okay. So what was it? Specifically, a design flaw combined with the lack of proper stability testing before setting sail led to the sinking almost immediately after leaving the harbor. And I just wanted to pull that out too, because that kind of shocked me as well, that they didn't do any stability testing. I guess, I don't know. Hey, it was a different time, like literally a different time. We're not just talking about like COVID, different time.
Yeah,
new
super
normal.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, way different time. All right. Our next most popular story this week, Bridgestone closing tire plant in Tennessee, 700 workers face layoffs. Bridgestone Americas is closing its plant in Laverne, Tennessee that makes radial tires for trucks and buses. As a result, some 700 employees will be laid off as the company tries to, quote, optimize its business footprint and, quote, strengthen its competitiveness. Bridgestone is further optimizing and strengthening across the U.S., and more cuts are coming to other U.S. sites, as well as in Latin America, specifically Argentina and Brazil. But the company hasn't shared any firm numbers other than location or for the other locations. According to the AP, the Laverne plant has a bit of a legacy as the first tire producing facility in North America, specifically for Bridgestone. But the company stopped making tires there for cars and light trucks about 25 years ago. Jeff, do you think Bridgestone will be able to stop the bleed, so to speak? And is this just what happens when there are other supply chain disruptions throughout the market?
So yes, I do. I mean, they're the number 2 tire maker in the world. Okay, so they've got a lot going for them. The biggest thing is they don't have a revenue problem; they have a profitability issue.
Yeah,
they're still selling, and their revenues are strong. It's just their profits are not. It comes from a couple different things. You touched on it there. The supply chain's weird. It continues to be weird, and we're still figuring things out there in terms of sourcing materials. And it's more than just rubber for modern day tires. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff that's actually going into there when you're talking about synthetic rubber and a lot of things that we do to make them, not pop so easily, last longer, keep the tread longer, all of that. So that is a difficulty. The price of rubber itself has just been skyrocketing. Now it's coming back down over the last couple of months, but that was an issue. And I think that would may be one of the bigger factors that have led to them increasing revenue but decreasing profits.
Yeah.
So when you're paying a lot more for stuff, it's a super competitive market. We're seeing more low cost, not high quality, but decent quality tires enter the mix. The ones that come to mind are Yokohama and another place out of Japan. Kumo is another one that we see a lot of. I know at my dealership that's been recommended more than once.
Yeah.
And it's because on average you're looking at $25 to $50 less per tire.
Yeah.
So these are all factors that are sort of going into this. Chinese tire makers are also playing a role on from a global perspective. So yeah, Bridgestone is dealing with a lot of different market conditions. When you couple in how difficult it is to forecast right now and source, definitely leading to a lot of those concerns. You would think with time should come more stability. They're not losing customers along the way. But you would hope ideally that we don't hear any more of this type of thing coming across in terms of closing facilities and shutting down. The other thing that comes to my mind right away is with all this talk about tariffs, is this something where a tariff on imported tires or imported rubber could potentially play a role?
Yeah.
Hard to say. It's a very complex supply chain when you look at where things are sourced from, where things are made, where they're sold. So it's not that cut and dry, which I think is also something to take into consideration from a bigger picture perspective. Yeah. When we do look at some of these facilities that are closing down due to cost pressures or due to financial issues, it's not always as simple as a tariff or shutting down a facility or whatever. It's usually part of a much more complex situation.
Well, and you talk about at the dealership, that's when I think of Bridgestone, because you always think of whatever they say they have 3 levels, right? And I can't remember whatever the lowest alternative is. They're like, I wouldn't go that low. And I wouldn't go that high. That's when they reference Bridgestone. And then it's usually the Yokohama. And it's just like, they're like, this is probably where you'd be fine. And I'm just like, all right, that's fine. Yeah. I prefer to not spend the $300 more on my tires.
I mean, you're just looking at $2,000 difference, or not, $200 difference in tires. And that can be a big deal.
No, it adds up. And I mean, one of the parts of this story, Ben, that stuck out to me too, is that, we saw 700 in Tennessee, but it looks like there could be quite a few more cuts coming across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the company also announced layoffs in Akron, Ohio, and a spokesperson said it's cutting about 4% of the 44,000 employees across North America and Latin America. Mm-hmm. So a significant number, like, I don't know, 1,700, something like that. And it sucks, it's terrible when you read about this. A lot of these employees, like in the plant that closed,
in the Verne,
they thought that this was going to be like their last job. I'm going to be able to stay here until I retire, and now they're, their whole world is kind of. But it's pretty standard for this kind of cost cutting, especially in the automotive industry right now, that's going through so many different transitions, and I think tire makers are probably feeling that as well too, don't you think? I mean, as EVs become more prevalent, tire manufacturing has to change, right?
Yeah,
it is changing.
It is changing. Well, and so it's 1,760 jobs, and I mean, you talk about Akron. I think there are like 700 people there. Des Moines, Iowa has another 700, and we're looking at another 1,060 jobs that need to come from somewhere. earlier this month, Bridgestone did say that they wanted to cut 130 people from Des Moines, Iowa. They started offering severance packages. It was like a buyout. And as of January 10th, 102 workers signed a letter of interest saying that they would take the severance package worth about $35,000. But I mean, that's still 28 people out of the remaining 600 that just don't know what's happening tomorrow. And talking about the supply chain, it makes sense in Des Moines because they make tires for Big Ag in particular. And I mean, John Deere laid off more than 1,500 workers last year. So there are going to be far-ranging implications from that, in tires being a pretty significant one. Either way, it is, Munson, to your point about how, these are jobs that are sometimes multi-generational. People are in the job for decades, think they're gonna, start there and retire there, and it's crazy when their life is just upended. And hopefully, I mean, it sounded like at least the 102, a lot of them were senior workers that were near retirement. Sometimes you just wish that could line up a little bit better, so that way, the ones that are close could go. But I mean, I get it.
There's all those other impacts to a community the size of Laverne too, in terms of grocery stores and other services too, that feel the impact of those folks not working there anymore and that facility being shut down.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, but I'm curious to see what does happen as a result, because I mean, Ben, when you talk about changing tire technology, like to that point, Jeff, EVs are probably going to burn through more tires.
Potentially. Yeah. I mean, they're heavier. Yeah. The acceleration is quicker. That's definitely going to play a role. And especially a renewed focus on safety as well and everything that's going on the roads right now. So I think it is going to be interesting. And I think one of the things that we're going to come back to is in terms of the composition of the tires as well, because rubber production is not exactly the most environmentally friendly process either. Yeah. So there's a lot of different factors at play that eat into the costs that make it very difficult to maintain profitability or maintain it at the level that you want to if you're a company the size and structure of Bridgestone.
We just need those tires, like a better version of the tires on like the lunar landers, right? Where they're like 3D or they morph to the surface. Absolutely durable, because not like you can fix a flat. But I don't know. That's tire technology is one of those things where we've seen just such cool concepts come out of what they could be, like the 3D printing morphing tire with the tread that changes based on what you're driving on. And it's just like,
yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff, though, doesn't work because we're so focused on fuel economy as well.
Yeah.
So that's also another factor. And when you look at all of the research and development that's also going in when a company like Bridgestone wants to roll out new tires, whether it's for a tractor or a car or whatever, it's just gotten so much more complex. And I think a lot of it is the struggles around forecasting right now, especially like in automotive.
Isn't it, wasn't Bridgestone the company that was experimenting with making the tires out of cactus? I can't remember.
They have pretty low margins too. I was looking, it's around 5%, which is doesn't give you a lot of leeway too. Yeah. So you're talking, there's a focus on sustainability, but then there's also more EVs coming onto the market, which means you may have, tires that are burning through faster. So it's kind of a push and a pull on margins, but it was, a significant decline, I think, in their last quarter, and they needed to go up because these cost-cutting measures are just going to keep coming if you have to operate on kind of razor-thin margins like that.
Yeah. I guess I didn't realize that they were that thin, but I mean, that does leave you very little room for error. Mm-hmm. Well, Jeff, talking about how EVs are going to be quicker, our next most popular story, great lead, is GM debuts the quickest Cadillac ever. Cadillac has announced plans to add to its V-Series lineup with the 2026 Cadillac Lyriq V, the first ever all-electric vehicle in the series, and it's an SUV. The Lyriq V, with an MSRP that starts at about $80,000, will have an estimated 0 to 60 time of 3.3 seconds, making it the quickest Cadillac ever, according to GM. The vehicle has approximately 615 horsepower and 650 pound-feet or 880 Newton meters of torque, or as producer Alex likes me to say, 880 Newton meters of torque. Because apparently whenever I say that, he's just like, man, you've never sounded like more of a nerd. Just like, even though I say Newton meters, he hears Newton meters. I don't get it. Well, it's going to have 880 Newton meters of torque in a competitive mode that provides a suite of traction management featuring features that are engineered to increase this vehicle's agility. Production is scheduled to begin early this year at the automaker's Spring Hill manufacturing plant in Tennessee. According to the company, the vehicle will be built with both U.S. and globally sourced parts, and on a full charge, the Lyriq V will have a range of 285 miles. GM plans to sell the Lyriq V in the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Other global markets are going to be announced later. Ben, do you find it odd that, you know, sometimes with all the new safety features, something is more powerful, has greater acceleration, and is yet still considered a safer vehicle?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for that, nerd.
You're welcome.
This is just me personally, but I think putting a super heavy EV with super fast acceleration on the streets is reckless.
Yeah.
But at least one major automotive company CEO kind of thinks crazy acceleration is a safety feature. I was reading about it was last year, Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares was speaking with the media at his company's STLA large EV platform launch. And he was talking about how he lives on a remote farm in Portugal. And when he's driving on the narrow roads, he'll get stuck behind big trucks. And he said, nothing is more difficult than starting to overtake a truck and then having to jump on the brakes because you just discovered that the acceleration of the car you're driving is not good enough to overtake in safe conditions. He said, the quicker your vehicle, the safer it is for overtaking. Oh, so that is a take, right? Yeah. But I was like, okay,
it's safer to pass people.
Yeah, I was like, okay, sure, yeah. But I'm like, does that one feature kind of make up for building a car that I think has the potential to make even like fender benders into, you know, catastrophic car accidents? I mean, when you look at the page for the Lyriq V,
yeah, you
can scroll down to dimensions, and they kind of conveniently leave out weight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're like, this is how tall it is. This is how long it is. And you have to dig a little deeper to find out how much it weighs. And that's like 6,000 pounds.
Okay.
At base level, 3 tons.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, they say that is, the industry has been talking about how, you know, the heavier EVs, I mean, we even did the story on how they need to re-engineer all the guardrails because they're so big that they're just going to go flying through them. So, I mean, you're right. They are going to be, you know, while we say they're going to be safer because of features, you know, they are going to be much more dangerous on the road. So, Jeff, when you're looking at the Lyriq V, this new SUV from Cadillac, can you see something like, okay, it's the quickest Caddy ever, and just be like, all right, you know what? Like GM is good at that. Like they're good at just like, okay, that's at base level is cool, you know?
Well, I think it's also common sense. EVs are always going to be quicker. They're going to be quicker off the gun than any other type of vehicle. That's just the way they're engineered. They're also going to be heavier. There's no way to avoid those two dynamics unless you put some sort of governor on the electric motors, and then you take away all the efficiency basically that you've gained by having in an EV. So it's a tough trade-off because I agree with Ben. You want to be safe, and you not necessarily want to promote this, 6,000 pound rocket coming off the line, but that is one of the benefits of an EV. So it's hard to get past that. And you're also spotlighting the efficiency of the way it operates as well in doing so. Yeah. So it is a trade-off. I can appreciate both sides of it. I think from a business perspective, what the Lyriq V offers is somewhat of a template for Cadillac. Right now, their sales over the last 10 years have been decreasing until last year, until 2024. Reason for that is there was a spike in Escalade sales. They were up by approximately 13,000. I'm just looking at U.S. sales numbers. Yeah. Escalades were up by like 15,000. Oh, wow. So everything at Cadillac, in a way, 25% of their U.S. sales are tied to one vehicle.
Yeah.
Okay. It's probably not not just luck, that they're coming out with a new electric Escalade here in 2025.
Yeah.
Okay. They saw the spike. They see the popularity. That's where they're going to go. I think it's a similar dynamic here with the Lyriq. I think they've seen some successes here. They can promote how it's so quick and how it operates this well. Let's keep going with that momentum and really build it up. And I think the Lyriq is actually part of what they're doing in building towards the electric Escalade.
Yeah.
So they're sort of getting some momentum for a brand that is struggling. Okay,
Yeah.
let's be honest. Cadillac does not have the same cachet that it had for our dads.
Yeah.
Okay, it just does not. It's also interesting. This is one of the few automakers that is still producing sedans.
Yeah.
So they do have some things that they can build around here, and I think anything they can use to promote their engineering prowess and sort of get away from the legacy dynamics that were tied to Cadillac with the boats and the big, long, inefficient V8s. That's what they're striving for here.
Yeah. And I think they're getting after it, right? So Cadillac wants 5 EVs in its portfolio, I think by like the end of the year. And that's going to match Tesla's lineup. One thing that I noticed, I was looking at CBT News. It's a trade publication for car dealers, right? So Cadillac doesn't even see Tesla as a luxury competitor. Even though their products are about the same price. According to CBT, Cadillac considers Audi, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW as its key rivals. And now there could be a reason for that. Like Cadillac sold 30,000 EVs last year. BMW sold 51,000, so out ahead. Audi sold about 29,000. Now Tesla sold about 633,000.
Right.
So they got a bit of a lead.
Yeah.
But what do you think of that in terms of Cadillac seeing itself competing as a luxury EV and not including Tesla in that category?
I think it depends on the parameters that they're using there, because Cadillac doesn't sell just EVs.
Yeah.
That's all Tesla sells.
Yeah.
So maybe if they want to classify them that way, I guess. I don't know. You can do whatever you want with numbers. You're the numbers, the math guy.
Yeah.
You know how all that kind of fits together.
Yeah. No, it's
all scaling.
yeah, it's an intricate mix.
So I think it's also delusional. Okay. It's also basically putting yourself in an arena that you feel comfortable with. It's basically admitting we're not up to the same level as these other guys without saying it.
Yeah.
And sort of picking your competition when that's not the reality of what you're really dealing with.
Yeah. Ben, what are your thoughts on Cadillac saying like, oh, no, we are the luxury automakers here sitting around 30 to 50,000 each. That's where we're competing. Not for the scraps at the 633,000 unit bottom, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they were always a luxury brand, so they want to maintain that, right?
Yeah. What is it like your personal take on Cadillac, and like has it changed over the years? Because I tend to agree with Jeff where I always saw Cadillac as the old person's car.
Mm-hmm.
Like you retire, you have a Caddy, and then
Yeah, it's like a retirement gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the chance to drive a Cadillac.
Yeah.
The suspension was like gone on it. You just bounce up and down. But I'm like, this is a fun car to drive.
Yeah.
And it's got like the bench seat in the front. So
So
you have like 4 people in the front seat with you if you want. Just go nuts. But that's what Cadillac has always been to me. And they always had that kind of distinctive size and shape.
Yeah.
So they're changing. I think the Lyriq V looks cool.
Yeah.
Despite its name. I think the name is dumb.
Yeah.
Just taking words and replacing the C at the end with a Q.
At least they didn't put like a number in there.
Well, yeah. And if you look at their other EV lineup,
Yeah.
Lyriq doesn't sound so bad
Oh,
compared
what
to
is-
like Celestic
Okay.
or Celestique. I
Oh,
don't know. I
okay.
don't know how you pronounce that.
Yes.
And then the Optic.
The Optic.
Yeah. And
Wow.
and then the Escalade IQ, and they really missed a chance there to just replace the C and Escalade with a Q.
Yeah.
Escalade.
It was right there. So you can get the Escalade, the Lyriq, the Optique, or the Celestique,
Yeah.
and then one to be named later,
Yeah.
like Mystery Fifth. All right. Well, I guess it's in your court now, GM. Let's see what you got coming next. All right. Our most popular story this week: Master Lock is closing headquarters, leaving Wisconsin after more than 100 years in the state. Master Lock first set up shop in Milwaukee in 1921. It appears that the company's 100-year-old legacy is coming to a rather sudden end. In May 2023, the company announced plans to shutter Master Lock's manufacturing operations in Milwaukee by March 2024. The company shifted work to other locations and external suppliers, and some 330 employees lost their jobs. Still, the company maintained its corporate headquarters in Oak Creek, a Milwaukee suburb. Now Master Lock is leaving Wisconsin entirely. On Wednesday, the company's parent, Fortune Brands Innovations, announced the closure of its Oak Creek headquarters as it consolidates operations in Illinois. According to WPR, some 120 people work at the facility and will have the option to keep their jobs, though their positions are going to be relocated to Deerfield, a Chicago suburb that's about 60 miles south of Oak Creek. Fortune Brands says it is consolidating U.S. regional offices into one campus, a headquarters in Deerfield to, quote, best position the company and its brands for long-term growth. According to the company, it picked Illinois for the expansion investment because of incentives offered through the state's Economic Development and Growing Economy, or EDGE program. Fortune Brands will receive an EDGE tax credit following an investment that creates at least 400 new full-time jobs and retains the 128 full-time jobs already in Deerfield. The specific investment amounts and square footage requirements were actually redacted in the EDGE agreement made public. By the end of 2027, Fortune expects its Deerfield campus to have capacity for more than 1,000 jobs. Jeff, you are always sorry to see a company with a legacy like this leave the state. But to me, anyways, it seems like the writing has been on the wall since 2023.
Yeah, not a surprise. I mean, I think, Fortune here has sort of been trying to cut a lot of those legacy ties and just focus on where they want to go in the future, which is more consolidation. A couple of things that stood out for me with this story is, number one, you don't see a lot of companies targeting a move to Lake and Cook County, Illinois. Yeah. Historically, always been extremely expensive from a tax perspective. Just operational expenses in general have been more there, which is why like property taxes in Cook County, especially, have been sky high. It's because everybody's fleeing that geography. Yeah. But in this case, for Fortune Brands, they felt it made sense for this brand.
It must be a good deal.
I think the EDGE money must be pretty significant. I think there was something I read in the story about specifics being redacted from the public release. Yeah. And not getting into a lot of the details, but I'm guessing it must have been a pretty sweet deal for them to expand in this way here. The other thing that stood out is, I wonder if we're seeing sort of this new dynamic, which is companies across the board, whether it's manufacturing or whatever the case is, for this consolidation. We're getting out of this mentality where remote work, it doesn't matter where we're located. We can all collaborate. There's enough tools out there. There's enough communication platforms that we don't need to be in the same room or the same building. I think we're backtracking on that. Yeah. And I don't always agree with it when we're looking at this scale, like bringing these huge corporate buildings and facilities together. However, there is something to be said for having people get together in an office as opposed to feeling on an island or isolated a little bit geographically. In this instance, again, a little bit shocking because we're not looking at bringing in 20 people here. We're looking at closing down an iconic location for 100 and almost 50 people. Yeah. So a couple of very interesting measures there, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, obviously they're out of Milwaukee, they're out of Wisconsin, but can they maintain this huge corporate structure there in Deerfield?
Well, and I've got to say a couple of things there. Like, so Master Lock in the area has always been, in my opinion, a good corporate citizen. Anytime that I've been a part of a fundraising effort, they or their workers have always contributed. There was always the huge Master Lock gift baskets that of all the different things that were donated. Did a great job. Also, putting together this story, the redacted part of the agreement just jumped out to me because I had never seen that before. Yeah. And we run these stories. We run multiple stories like this on a daily basis, and they're all very clear. Just like, you hit this number, you get this number. You hit this number, you get that number. And they kind of put it all out there on the table. And so that was really surprising to me. And finally, about the return to office rhetoric, it was like glaring to me. And I wonder if they leaned into that language a little bit just because that's where we are culturally, where it's just like Fortune Brands CEO Nicholas Fink said, quote, and I got a couple of longer quotes here, so I apologize. Bringing together associates from across all brands and functions into one state-of-the-art campus will help us to bring innovations and products to life faster while also making the organization more efficient and aligned. And I agree with that. I think that's how it works. And especially when you have specialties in so many different areas like Fortune Brands has, there's a lot people could learn from each other there. You're not just siloed in your perfect lock-making business. You can lean on other industries. Fink also adds, by working as peers across the leadership team and reporting directly to me in one physical location, the leaders of our major businesses and commercial functions will be best positioned to focus on the highest growth opportunities as we look to expand our leadership in brands, innovation, and channel. Now, to me, that one just leapt off the pages. I need to micromanage you. I need to see you. I need to see you working, nose to the grindstone. And that was the one, Ben, for me that just was like, oh, okay. Like, I don't trust you if you're working anywhere I can't see you. And while I do agree with half of the reason they're doing it, the other, it's just like, all right, you might be a touch to work for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For whatever reason, it never seems to hit quite as hard when you hear about a headquarters closing as opposed to like a manufacturing site.
Yeah.
But it's still, a significant impact.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
130 jobs or whatever.
Right.
It's a lot of families.
Mm-hmm. And it's just terrible for the state of Wisconsin to lose such an iconic brand. Master Lock, I don't know if they're quite on this level as like Kleenex or like, Q-tip or, Band-Aids.
Yeah.
But it's almost become like a generic term for a padlock. And you really can't overstate how garbage padlocks were before Harry Sorf, the founder of Master Lock, kind of developed his way to make a better padlock, but not prohibitively expensive.
Before, so they were just hot trash before.
It was just garbage. Yeah, if you hit it with a hammer, you're in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Can you find a hammer? Yeah, you can open this lock. Yeah, right. But it was like they were like, you use thicker steel, but it'll cost more. And so he used a laminated steel. Basically, let's just use more of our thin steel that we have.
Okay.
Stick it together, and boom, we got thick steel now.
Okay.
And completely changed. Made padlocks actually work.
Yeah.
Well,
and Jeff, to some of your points too, like a lot of readers sounded off on this one in terms of like, man, if you think the cost of living in Oak Creek, Wisconsin is high, wait till you try moving your family to Deerfield or even commuting, because it sounds like you're a close 60 miles away from the office, which some people can do a long commute. Hey, you throw on the podcast and 60 miles will get you there. But if you're going from Oak Creek and driving to Deerfield, a 90-minute Today Manufacturing podcast isn't going to get there. You might be able to listen to a few of them to get you there. Yeah. That's a hard commute.
Yeah, and heaven forbid there's an accident.
Oh God, yeah. It's I don't know. There's just never been such a rightful combative relationship between license plates. Just like, who's that guy? Makes sense. Makes sense. You see the plate? Illinois. Well, it's I hope that some of the families are able to stay with the company, and at least in that area, I feel like those are talents that are still in desperate need a lot of other places in town. So hopefully people will be able to catch on somewhere else. All right. Well, before we jump into, in case you missed it, the stories that weren't as popular on our website, we have another word from our new sponsor, Clio Communications. This episode is brought to you by Clio Communications. Increasing efforts in digitalization, automation, and analytics is a priority for 30% of operation and supply chain officers heading into 2025. However, the majority of the supply chain workforce still lacks the digital expertise needed to operate promising tools, such as generative artificial intelligence and other automation tools. The 2024 Supply Chain Jobs Report from Clio Communications gives you a detailed look into what supply chain organizations are doing, or what they're not doing, to prepare their workforce for emerging tech, along with the digital skills you need to embed into your hiring criteria. Download the 2024 Supply Chain Jobs Report right now. All right. In case you missed it, the story is maybe not as popular on our websites like IN.com and manufacturing.net, Design and Development Today, Medical Design and Development Today. There's quite a few of them. But I'll go first this week. All right, my In Case You Missed It was a story I worked on that sometimes you got a feeling that it might be an In Case You Missed It story because you're just like, man, what a great story that maybe not a lot of people are going to click on. But force feeding it to you, I wanted you to know about how Panasonic makes products out of used home appliances. So Panasonic and Mitsubishi Materials recently provided an update on a joint effort more than 10 years in the making to make a product material product, or PMP, loop. Since 2011, the collaboration has strived to reuse gold, silver, and copper recovered from waste circuit boards, primarily from old Panasonic home appliances. The companies say their PMP loop is the industry's first that actually achieved consistent resource recycling. As of December 2024, the partners have recovered 1.1 tons of gold, 33 tons of silver, and 8,100 tons of copper. I chose this story. I think it's obvious why I chose this story. I'm hurt that more people didn't read it. But the other reason that I chose this story was because it actually shows how when a couple of major players in an industry try to find a solution to a problem, they can actually get it done. And it's not, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of resources and partners to make that loop work. But I don't know. I found this very encouraging. Jeff, did you have a chance to check out the story?
Well, it is interesting, especially when you talk about two big companies coming together and sharing resources, and really Panasonic and Mitsubishi is kind of in everything, but this is definitely a focal point for Panasonic. I think one of the big things that these types of partnerships help alleviate is those horror stories you hear about third world countries where basically they're taking all of this digital garbage and having kids look through for all of the precious metals and the recyclable materials. And it just creates this almost black market recycling ring. Yeah. And then you don't know where stuff is coming from, and it becomes a much bigger issue on more levels than just recovering and recycling responsibly. We have a recycling issue in this country. We don't have the right infrastructure in place to handle all the waste that we throw, all the things that we throw away. Yeah. We need to have a more circular approach to things. And even if you're not buying into the environmental dynamics, buy into the economic dynamics of it. Because when you can recycle and use these same materials over and over again, that eliminates some of these, or it doesn't eliminate, but it's going to decrease some of the supply chain pressures. Mm-hmm. It's going to decrease some of your sourcing concerns. And ideally, it'll drive prices, or at least help maintain prices on a lot of these critical elements that we need to make stuff like, lithium ion batteries. So we're not buying everything from China. Yeah. So a lot of this, to me, at its core, it's less, even though it is a sustainability story, it's not really about that. It really just makes economic sense.
Yeah. And if they could figure out how to make another PMP loop that is specific to, let's say, batteries, I think we'd be getting somewhere. A little bit more about how this loop works. First, Panasonic ET Solutions, which is a Panasonic subsidiary, removes the iron and aluminum from the boards and sells the materials. The waste circuit board processing is then outsourced to partner companies that sort the materials collected from home appliance recycling plants and repair sites across Japan. The boards are then delivered to Mitsubishi Materials, which extracts gold, silver, and copper from the refined waste printed circuit boards through smelting and returns the metal materials back to Panasonic ET. The recovered gold, silver, and copper is then turned into things like gold plating solutions, copper wires, and other materials that Panasonic Group uses for manufacturing. I mean, by using the copper that was recovered from this loop instead of smelting copper ores, Panasonic says that it's reduced 33,000 tons of CO2. And Ben, this is particularly important because recycling-oriented manufacturing is critical for places like Japan, where, self-sufficiency of natural resources is pretty low. So, I mean, to Jeff's point, not just how we're going to use it, how the other countries can use it that, have a little bit, are a little bit more strained when it comes to natural resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think what Jeff said about this making good financial sense. Yeah. I think that's that's huge. And when you see like two competitors like this working together on a project, like that should really kind of it's kind of cause for alarm. It's like this is something they probably could have implemented a long time ago, a recycling program like this before the need really even
before
arose.
things got real scarce. Yeah,
right. And the fact that they're doing it now kind of tells you that things are getting scarce. They're seeing, like maybe an end of the runway here.
Yeah,
and deciding that they have to work together because sustainability, everybody does it. There's a lot of talk about it.
Yeah,
but is it ever really like a priority?
Yeah, well, we've talked about it a lot on the podcast where we talk about why we need to be more sustainable, why recycling needs to be more at the forefront, why we need it now. And then it's always about the infrastructure. How are we going to pay for it? How are we going to subsidize it? And I think we need to see more stories like this where, hey, this is a success story that's 13 plus years in the making, but we need more of this to show that, hey, if you start working on it now, you can achieve a level of success for it. I don't know. I think that's really important. All right. Jeff, what's your In Case You Missed It this week?
So I picked in a story. We talk about these having implications on the industry moving forward. There is something there, but more than anything, I just found it very, very interesting.
Okay.
The story that I picked here was on foodmanufacturing.com, and it was called Beer Helps Grocery Stores Tap Sales in Other Categories. So we've talked a lot on here about how beer consumption is sort of decreasing. The younger generations just aren't into it. They have different consumption habits. What I've always said is I would agree that we're buying less, but not necessarily less frequently. I think there's just maybe a higher, we're buying less Miller Lite and maybe more of a local craft brew or something like that.
Yeah.
Instead of a 30-pack, we're buying a 6-pack.
Yeah.
Those types of deals. And I think that sort of leads into the research that Cornell found out here when they looked at in Colorado how a lot of grocery stores were allowed to sell beer. Now, here in Wisconsin, that's like, well, of course they would. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But in a lot of other states, they're very choosy about where you can sell any type of alcohol product.
Yeah.
But what they found here is in Colorado is that beer purchasing households visited a grocery store 3.6% more often and increased their grocery store expenditures by 8% per month. Focusing on the top 10 categories in shoppers' grocery baskets, the researchers found that consumers increased their spending on beer-related products, what they call, which is fresh produce, snacks, cheese, deli products, and soda by 17%. Now, I don't know, when I'm drinking beer, I'm not sure how much produce and soda I'm drinking, but
lemons and limes.
I'll give the soda to the kids. And, maybe I'm not sure where the produce comes in, but if somebody's smarter than me and they're eating carrots while they're drinking beer, God bless. I mean, that's a good call.
Carrot straw.
But all the other stuff definitely fits in with snacks, cheese, and deli meats. I mean, that's definitely a go-to. I think my biggest takeaway here is understanding sort of the depths of some of the research that we see for consumer habits and realizing there are these connected fibers that influence other areas. I think it's also looking at the fact that one of the things they describe in the article is going with loss leaders because of the benefits that can come from their connective tissue to some of these other products and sales opportunities. I think that does relate to manufacturing when you look, again, it's a lot of legacy products out there and trying to get energy behind the newer stuff or what it can lead to and showing your total breadth of offerings. Yeah. So it's relying on some of the older stuff to get in there to show people the newer stuff as well, I guess, is sort of where I would go with it. And I think it was just really interesting to see how that kind of came together.
Well, I feel like I live this article because, there are cheaper places that I go to for what I call like big shopping, right? Where I get a cart full of groceries and it's like $300, right? Mm-hmm. But then there are places where if I'm just running out to get some drinks for myself, friends, or family, I'll go someplace closer. And anytime I do, it's like, okay, but I mean, on the produce thing, I'm never buying apples because I'm also drinking gin. But it's just like, oh, I need to go get gin and I also need apples for my kids' lunches, But I'll go to stores where things are a little bit more expensive, not crazy, and pick up a few more things. So I completely, this made total sense to me. Almost on a daily basis. But I don't know.
Because you love beer.
Yeah, well, I mean, because I like to have some sort of place to run to when there's.
So you want to pick up some Bud Light and cherry pie? That's what this is all about.
I mean, definitely the Bud Light for the missus. Yeah. No, Bud Light, gin, and then
Cheetos.
Yeah, Cheetos, spicy chips, as my kids like to call them.
Yeah.
A new band name, Apples and Gin. I don't know about that one.
Nah.
It sounds like a bad like '90s cover band that would be like Gin Blossoms, maybe like Fiona Apple specialty, real rare.
Wow, going deep into the library, man.
Just like, what are they playing? You're not going to believe this, but their catalog is kind of weird. No, so I get that. And honestly, when you talk about going to other states, I remember the first time that I traveled somewhere and I'm like, oh, well, we also need to pick up drinks. And they're like, well, we have to go across the street. And you're just like, what do you mean? Like, oh no, you have to go to a liquor store.
But then it's also a drive-through, which I always think is funny too.
Yeah.
Like, I think I went through a drive-through liquor store in Wyoming.
Okay.
Like, thank you.
Yeah. I've never done the drive-through, but like, if to the point of the article, when you go to those specialty liquor stores, I mean, you're kind of just getting what you're looking for. I mean, maybe you do have that basket of limes there, but it's kind of a missed opportunity.
Yeah, the produce, like, they're not going to have produce there, but they will have maybe a basket of limes, maybe lemons. I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't know if you guys do this too, but when I go shopping, I try to organize things on my list in the order I'm going to like encounter them in the store.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So my list is always like produce, beer, wine. So it looks like it's very top of mind for me.
Okay.
But that's just because it's organized that way. But yeah, I mean, I think there's logic to them wanting you to encounter the liquor section pretty early on, because you're picking up what you need there, and then you're thinking, well, some of this other stuff that I'm walking by is going to fit well with what I plan to drink later, which is booze.
Yeah. Well, in like small town Wisconsin, some of our towns even have rules where you have to buy the liquor at a different checkout, and that inconvenience alone is enough for me to just be like, how dare you? Who do I need to talk to? And they're like, the village. You have to talk to the village, and you got to talk to these 3 people and get 3 out of the 5 to vote on it. I'm like, oh, you have this conversation on a pretty regular basis.
I think I see more of that just because now, like going through the checkout aisle, like there's a lot of high school kids.
Oh yeah.
So I think it just helps them from a head count perspective, not having to call somebody over and scan the booze.
No, it makes sense, but I don't need that.
All right. David wants 21-year-olds.
Nah, I want
21-year-old age limit at the checkout.
I mean, I feel like if they can sell me some Cheetos, you know, they could probably sell me beer too.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and you feel bad when you go through the aisle with the actual like person, because it's usually a high school kid.
Yeah.
And then they have to go find somebody to check out for you if you're buying booze. And so I usually just go to the self-checkout, because in Wisconsin, I'm sure, I don't know how many people have booze in their cart when they're going to the grocery store. But it's
all of them.
Yeah, it's got to be in the high, like 80 to 90% range. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty strong.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, what's your in case you missed it this week?
Oh, my in case you missed it is Baxter's hurricane-hit IV fluid factory has restarted all manufacturing lines. So Baxter's North Carolina-based North Cove manufacturing site, which employs more than 250,000 people. I was going to go 2,500 people.
Still a lot.
And they're focused on making intravenous and dialysis solutions, was hit hard last year by Hurricane Helene. The damage resulted in the temporary closure of the facility, which is the country's largest manufacturer of these solutions. And it really impacted the domestic supply chain. But now the company said it has restarted all 10 manufacturing lines at the site and expects to restore full production in the first quarter of this year. And Baxter has dealt with a lot at this site, but through it all, the company has taken care of its employees and been like fully transparent about the recovery efforts. And I really admire what they've done here. I think it's kind of the blueprint for how a situation should be handled like this. They started out with like weekly updates. Here's what we're doing. This is the progress we've made. This is where things look. And I mean, I suppose when you're dealing with, a product that's, kind of life or death.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Without a doubt.
You have to be this transparent, but it was just really refreshing to see them say, we're still struggling in this area, but this is where we're at. This is where we hope to be. We're going to give you another update on this date. Yeah. It was really informative and helpful
and not bloated with jargon.
Right.
It was, because I completely agree with you, the blueprint for how you should handle these types of situations, because this was one of the first stories in a long time that, and I mean, you've been following the Baxter thread ever since the hurricane hit and just completely disrupted operations there. But two of the women in my family are nurses, and they were talking about how they couldn't get these supplies because this plant was hit. And I'm just like, well, if you'd like to know where they're at, you could follow medicaldesignanddevelopment.com, and we'll give you we'll fill you in at least once a week. But no, it has, and I don't know how it compares to other recovery efforts, but I do know that being able to follow it certainly seems like they are going above and beyond to restore operations for a very mission critical supply chain and really putting their employees to work, kind of making it happen, and making sure they're whole as well. Yeah,
I mean, they were not only taking care of their employees and working to restore production at this site, but they were also working with the FDA to ensure that the supply chain disruptions were minimized, and that even worked out to increasing imports and some limited authorizations for stuff to just kind of as a stopgap measure until they could be fully up and running again. So they took it seriously, and they were very transparent, and it was great to see.
Yeah, completely agree. Jeff, what were your thoughts on the latest update from Baxter?
Well, I think that is the biggest takeaway. Ben said this can be sort of a case study or an example of what to do. Not everybody has the financial resources or stability of a Baxter. I mean, this is a global pharma giant, but you can still communicate. You can still have that transparency and be talking to all your stakeholders and letting them know what's going on. There is nothing wrong with that. I think there's this misconception throughout, especially the industrial sector, of this is us, we'll deal with it, we'll let you know. But opening up a little bit and letting people have an understanding of what's going on is going to lead to stronger relationships, more patience, and less pressure to get all of these things done. And they had there's hundreds of things on their punch list here to get done so they can be up and running again. Again, take some of that stress off by just talking to people. So when they get you on the phone, they're like, when are you going to be ready? You can say, we've talked about this. Yeah. And this is where we're at.
Well, and compare this to Impact Plastics, where we've only heard about the flooding. We've only heard about, things that have gone wrong in the rebuild efforts. And to your point, these updates could just be like, hey, we're having trouble with insurance. Yeah. Hey, we're having trouble, trying to figure out the structural integrity of the building, whether or not we got to leave. I don't know. I think it goes really far with your own integrity as well as your relationship with the community, letting everybody know kind of where you stand. Definitely. Not just because especially when you keep everyone in the dark, that's when the rumors start to fly. Yeah. And that's when people wind up, coming to their own conclusions. And I don't know, it can kind of get bad for you out there.
100%.
Damage your brand. All right, well, let's jump into final thoughts before we get out of here this week. Ben, what's your final thought?
Well, it's been really, really cold and awful here lately, and now it's not so bad. So I'm finally going to take down my Christmas decorations.
He's going to do it.
Yeah, and I just want to say I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad that I haven't done it yet.
Yeah,
it's in shambles. Like they're tipped over.
Yeah,
the lights are like sagging off the gutters because they get knocked around in the wind. But I'm like, whatever.
No,
I just turned it off.
Yeah.
And I was like, you guys can't even see it, but you can clearly see it. Yeah, but no, I don't feel bad.
I mean, as a person that a week or so after Christmas was up there taking the stuff down in those freezing temperatures, where I didn't even think I could take the lights down without them like being so brittle they would shatter.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you did the right thing.
Yeah. I'm like the decorations will shatter, and if I fall off the ladder, like I too will shatter. Yeah. Like Wesley Snipes at the end of like Demolition Man.
That's right.
Yeah.
We are cryogenically frozen. No, it's and well, the other thing is it's finally starting to warm up. We've had like 2 of the warmest days. Like it's record-breaking warm today. And it seems like that always happens when it's the busiest day in the office. When it's just like, what is it, 55 out there? No, can't get away from my desk at all, not for a second. But I bet it's nice. You let me know how it is.
It looks cool through the window. Yeah.
Yeah, Andy opened the door for a hot minute. He's like, yeah, that was kind of fun. I'm like, you could leave that open. Nice. Get some air in here. My final thought this week is that while he's not here, producer Eric is coming up on a milestone birthday next week. And so I just wanted to give a special shout out to producer Eric. Happy birthday. It's going to be his birthday about 2 days after this comes out. Love you. Couldn't do this without you.
We recorded the first
We recorded the
3 years ago.
about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
According to producer Alex, we recorded the first episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast on Eric's birthday.
You're welcome.
Yeah, just
Pretty cool celebration for a birthday.
Yeah, young and spry back then, and well, let's just say welcome to the club.
Yeah, we got something kind of fun planned for your birthday.
Yeah.
Work.
Yeah, you're going to be at work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, a wholly new project amidst a pandemic. And nobody wants to be within 10 feet of each other.
Yeah.
Get it.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
Yeah. Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
So, I like to do a lot of ice fishing this time of year, obviously. What is the one bane of ice fishermen, the worst thing that you have to deal with? In my opinion,
What's it in your opinion?
wind.
Oh, yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
That's why you have the pop-up, the heater, all that kind of stuff to deal with the wind. So last Sunday, my father-in-law wanted to go ice fishing. He'd never been before. Special thanks to my brother-in-law for loaning me some gear. We went out. We're all set up. We're doing good. Time to go in. It had not been windy all day.
Yeah.
Perfectly calm, pleasant, like a nice day actually to be outside. We were listening to the Badger game. All good. Pull up all the stakes out of the pop-up. And before we get a chance to collapse it, this big gust of wind comes up and blows. If you know what a pop-up looks like, it's basically a big tent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, it's been cold, like Ben said, but we don't have any snow on the ice.
Stop it.
So this thing just takes off like a rocket down this frozen lake.
Yeah.
And I'm like penguin walking, trying to catch up to it.
Yeah.
And I get to within maybe 10 feet, another huge gust of wind takes and blows this thing. And it is like,
Oh, yeah. It's
toppling and everything. It looks like tumbleweed on the ice. And then you see this, guy like, penguin walking again, shuffling to try to get to this. I get up to it. I'm like, there's no way it's going to do this to me again.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it did not.
Okay.
As soon as I grabbed onto it, another big gust of wind comes up. So I'm bringing this thing back, and it's just like fighting me the whole way. It's like a dog on a leash or something.
Oh, yeah.
Finally get it back there. I get up to my father-in-law. We're going to hold it. And he is just like almost in tears laughing because he's like, I thought it was going to go again. I'm like, we're like maybe 20 feet from shore.
Yeah.
And there is no way the angle of the wind was going to push that towards shore. It was just going to keep taking it further out on the lake.
Yeah.
So best practice, word to the wise, if you do go ice fishing with a pop-up, have somebody hold on to that thing after you take the stakes out.
Maybe. Hold on. Okay. I was going to say throw a stake in there, but
Just have somebody hold on to it. It's not heavy.
Yeah.
But that wind will get you.
Yeah. No, it is because for me, when you're ice fishing, sitting on that like 5-gallon bucket out in the elements, when it's like cool but still nice out, I love that. Like being out.
Sitting on a bucket?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Get a captain's chair, man.
I don't know. It's,
I'm old. I need a chair.
Well, I don't know. I guess
Plus,
we'll
after
see.
you're chasing after the pop-up happening.
Oh, true. No,
down there.
I completely understand that. We're like, and as soon as you can like feel it the second before it goes, and you're just like, I don't have a chance. But
I did also get some yak tracks for my boots. So if I do have to chase after, at least I'll have a little bit of traction.
Yeah.
Because that was the worst part.
That's
just
smart.
waiting to fall on my back. Yeah.
Did you guys catch anything?
No.
Yeah.
Kind of a lot of different reasons why we did not.
Yeah, caught some good times.
Exactly.
Some memory. Or what does the person like to say? You know what? I caught a buzz.
There you go.
Good enough. All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Ben at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also reach Anna at IN.com with email the podcast / sorry we missed you at IN.com. Wait, no. Yeah, you get it. All right. Please subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us every week or every Thursday when we go live, and subscribe to our daily newsletter so you can make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. All right. For Jeff Ranke and Ben Munson, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.